You want us to award a city water contract to a girl plumber who patches leaks for tips?
That's a good one.
Gentlemen, the site report.
Chelsea Okafor pressed her calloused hands flat on the mahogany conference table and did not look away. Across from her, 3 senior partners in tailored suits were laughing. Not nervous laughter, not polite laughter. The deep, unashamed belly laugh of men who had never once been told no. The firm's director leaned back in his leather chair and pointed at her weathered tool bag like it was a punchline. You want us to award a city water contract to a girl plumber who patches leaks for tips? He didn't wait for her answer. He didn't need one. What none of the laughing men noticed was the sleek black Rolls-Royce idling silently at the curb outside the glass tower. And none of them knew the man watching from the tinted back seat wore a debt on his soul. A debt 15 years old, owed to a dead man whose daughter was currently sitting alone in that room. Lim Sang-hoon straightened his collar and watched Chelsea walk out of the building, her head held high. Everything was about to change. The city of Harlow Bay had 2 different water systems, though nobody in power ever said so out loud. Uptown, the pipes were new, pressure-tested, and regularly inspected. The water ran clean and cold in granite kitchens where nobody thought twice about drinking from the tap. In the crumbling industrial district where Chelsea Okafor grew up, the pipes were something else entirely, corroded, aging, held together by patches on patches, fixed by whoever was cheapest, approved by whoever was paid to approve it. The children there grew up with stomach aches the doctors called stress. The adults called it something they couldn't afford to name. Chelsea had been fixing those pipes since she was 16 years old, standing beside her father, Emmanuel Okafor, the best plumber in the district and the most stubborn man alive. He taught her that a pipe never lied. If something was wrong underground, the metal showed you. You just had to know how to read it. Emmanuel died when Chelsea was 22. The official report said it was a work accident, a gas line. Wrong place, wrong time. Chelsea buried her father, took on his clients, and kept fixing pipes because what else was there to do? She had a younger cousin, a days to feed and rent to pay, and grief was a luxury she couldn't afford. 5 years later, Chelsea was the best pipe technician in 3 districts. She was 27 years old with a growing reputation, a clean license, and a folder full of rejected contract bids from every elite engineering firm in the city. They always found a reason. Not enough corporate experience, no registered business entity, liability concerns. The reasons changed. The rejection never did. Then came the job on Caldwell Street. A routine repair on a burst municipal main, onto deep beneath the oldest neighborhood in the city. The job that was supposed to take 4 hours. The job that changed everything. Chelsea lowered herself into the trench, switched on her inspection torch, and saw something that made the breath leave her body. The corrosion on those pipes was not old. It was not accidental. Someone had built this to fail. Hello, family. Welcome back to Afro K Mafia Diary. Before we dive into today's story, I want to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your city and country in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into it. The alarm clock buzzed loudly in the dark, but Chelsea Okafor was already awake. At 27, she knew the exact sound of Harlow Bay waking up. She threw off her thin blanket and quietly put on her heavy, mud-stained work boots so she would not wake her sleeping younger cousin, Ades. Ades was the only family Chelsea had left, and keeping a roof over her head was the only thing that mattered. Chelsea grabbed her battered tool bag, its heavy weight a familiar comfort in her calloused hands. She stepped out into the freezing morning air of the forgotten industrial district. Her first job was a burst pipe in a crumbling apartment down the street. The elderly woman living there could only pay her with a warm bowl of rice and a quiet prayer, but Chelsea never complained. She was the best plumber in this neglected part of the city, and these people relied on her. While the wealthy uptown neighborhoods had clean water and perfect pipes, her streets were left to rot. Chelsea tightened her grip on her wrench, ready to fight for her people today. Chelsea stood nervously in the bright, spotless lobby of Halloran and Brent Engineering. This was the most elite firm in the entire city, and she was here to submit her honest bid for a major municipal water contract. She had spent 3 long weeks perfecting her paperwork, making sure every single detail was absolutely correct. She finally walked into the massive glass conference room, holding her faded folder tightly. 3 wealthy men in expensive tailored suits sat at a huge mahogany table, staring at her dirty work boots and battered leather tool bag with clear disgust. The lead director did not even bother to open her file. He pushed it back across the smooth table with a cruel, mocking smile. He laughed coldly, his voice echoing in the large room. He told her to stop wasting their valuable time. He leaned forward and stated firmly that a simple street handyman would never win a major city contract. Humiliated but trying to hide her deep pain, Chelsea picked up her folder. She turned around and walked out, her jaw set with silent, burning anger. She refused to let them win. Chelsea's heavy boots splashed into the freezing mud of Caldwell Street. She had been called for a sudden emergency, a massive burst pipe flooding the old neighborhood. She quickly turned on her bright flashlight and jumped down into the deep, dark trench. As the freezing water soaked through her thick denim jeans, she wiped the toxic sludge from the broken metal. Suddenly, she froze. She stared closely at the jagged edges of the heavy iron. This was not normal rust or simple old age. The deep, sickly blue corrosion pattern was far too perfect and completely deliberate. The pipe had been secretly treated with cheap, dangerous chemicals. Her heart pounded loudly against her ribs as she finally realized the terrifying truth. The wealthy city contractors had purposefully built this exact water infrastructure to fail over time. They were knowingly using toxic materials that slowly leaked poison into the drinking water of the poorest families in Harlow Bay. Chelsea climbed out of the muddy hole, her hands shaking with deep anger and raw fear. She had to find out exactly who was responsible for this silent, deadly crime. Later that cold night, Chelsea sat alone at her small kitchen table. She reached into a dusty cardboard box hiding under her bed and pulled out her late father's old investigation notebooks. The worn leather covers were completely filled with Emmanuel's careful handwriting. With shaking fingers, she turned the yellowed pages and stared in absolute shock. 5 long years ago, her brave father had been secretly documenting these exact same pipe failures across the forgotten industrial district. He had carefully drawn detailed sketches of the sickly blue corrosion and listed the corrupt contractors involved. He already knew the water was being deliberately poisoned. Chelsea felt a heavy, painful knot form in her tight stomach as the dark pieces finally came together. Emmanuel had been getting dangerously close to exposing the powerful people behind this massive, deadly crime. Just days before he could show his clear evidence to the city, a tragic and sudden gas line accident had violently killed him. Tears of fresh grief and burning anger filled her dark eyes. It was never an accident. He was murdered for knowing the terrifying truth. Chelsea did not sleep. The small clock on her kitchen wall ticked loudly as she spread her father's old notebooks across the scratched wooden table. Her eyes burned from exhaustion, but her fierce determination kept her awake. She opened her cheap laptop and began searching the public city records, hunting for the exact names of the elite contractors who built the poisonous pipes. She carefully followed the confusing trail of money, clicking through endless documents and complicated legal forms. As the sun slowly began to rise, the dark truth finally appeared on her glowing screen. The money did not go to real, honest businesses. Instead, millions of dollars were secretly hidden in fake offshore shell companies. These invisible companies existed only on paper, designed perfectly to hide the stolen wealth. Even worse, Chelsea found the official signatures hiding at the bottom of the final pages. The corrupt city council had personally approved every single toxic project. The powerful leaders of Harlow Bay knew they were poisoning the poor neighborhoods, and they did it just to get incredibly rich and powerful without caring who they hurt. The dangerous men hiding in the tall glass towers quickly noticed Chelsea's late-night computer searches. The elite contractors possessed advanced security programs, and they immediately realized that the smart female plumber was snooping into their darkest secrets. They decided to send her a very clear and terrifying warning. The next morning, Chelsea walked outside and froze in pure horror. Her trusted old work truck, the only vehicle she owned, was completely destroyed. The heavy tires were violently slashed, and the windshield was shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces. She ran forward, her heart pounding against her ribs, and threw open the bent metal doors. Her expensive industrial plumbing equipment was totally ruined. The custom iron wrenches her father had given her were heavily damaged, and her high-tech inspection cameras were smashed beyond repair. Without her specialized tools, she could not work, and without work, she could not feed her young cousin. Chelsea fell to her knees in the cold street, staring at the terrible wreckage. The wealthy elites were trying to crush her spirit and ruin her life before she could expose their massive crimes against the poor. Chelsea tried to buy new tools the very next morning, but every hardware store in Harlow Bay turned her away with fear. The wealthy contractors had secretly blacklisted her name across the entire city. Desperate, she checked her official plumbing status online, and her stomach dropped in absolute panic. A cruel, totally fabricated safety violation had been suddenly placed on her hard-earned professional license. The corrupt, greedy city council had legally locked her out of working on any pipes. She could not buy a single cheap wrench, and she could not legally accept any plumbing jobs to feed her young cousin. Chelsea sat heavily on the cold concrete steps of her small apartment building, burying her tired face in her calloused hands. She was completely stripped of her honest livelihood in just 24 hours. The powerful elites wanted her to silently starve in the forgotten industrial district. They thought taking away her only way to make enough money would quickly break her brave spirit. However, as tears of deep frustration burned her dark eyes, a fierce, burning anger grew even stronger inside her heavy heart. Far away from the muddy streets, Lim Sang-hoon stood quietly in his massive, completely spotless office overlooking the dark waterfront. He was the most feared Korean mafia boss in the city, wearing an expensive, tailored dark suit. His sharp, calculating eyes stared out the tall glass windows as his top men gave him their daily reports. The room was absolutely silent until his trusted guard mentioned a brand new problem. The corrupt city council was actively hunting a young female plumber who had found their secret offshore shell companies. When the guard carefully said the name Chelsea Okafor, Sang-hoon froze completely. He instantly remembered the terrifying, violent night 15 long years ago. Chelsea's brave father, Emmanuel Okafor, had pulled him from a blazing fire and saved his life, asking for absolutely nothing in return from him. Sang-hoon immediately raised his hand, stopping all business talk in the busy room. He did not care about his own important meetings or his illegal money today. He dropped everything in a single heartbeat. The Shadow King of Harlow Bay was finally going to pay his heavy life debt. Two enormous men in dark suits knocked firmly on Chelsea's broken apartment door. They did not speak much, but their serious faces told her she had no choice. They drove her in a quiet, armored black car to a stunning waterfront building. Chelsea felt small in her dirty work clothes as she stepped into a massive, spotless office. Standing by the window was Lim Sang-hoon, the terrifying and powerful Korean mafia boss. He slowly turned around, his dark eyes looking at her with a strange, heavy sadness. He pointed to an old, faded photograph resting on his shiny wooden desk. It was a picture of her father, Emmanuel, smiling brightly. Sang-hoon softly explained the deep truth she never knew. 15 long years ago, her brave father had pulled him from a deadly, burning warehouse during a violent raid, saving his life. Emmanuel had refused any money or reward. Sang-hoon stepped closer, his voice low and incredibly serious. He promised to finally pay his heavy life debt right now. He offered Chelsea his total, unbreakable protection against the corrupt city council trying to ruin her completely. The very next morning, the terrifying power of Lim Sang-hoon changed everything. The cruel blacklist erasing Chelsea's name suddenly vanished from the official city records. Her clean plumbing license was immediately restored without a single question. When she walked down to her ruined storage unit, she gasped in pure shock. Brand new. These highly expensive industrial tools were perfectly stacked inside the small space. She found heavy cast-iron wrenches, advanced inspection cameras, and a beautiful new work truck parked safely by the curb. The wealthy contractors were absolutely terrified of the fierce Mafia boss, so they backed away quickly. Chelsea stood in the cold sunlight, staring at the shiny new metal tools. She knew that dealing with a dangerous criminal was extremely risky. However, she also knew she could never fight the corrupt city council completely alone. She deeply needed this hidden power to save her neighborhood and feed her young cousin. Taking a deep breath, Chelsea cautiously accepted Sang-hoon's dark help. A very tense, powerful alliance was quietly formed between the angry street plumber and the most dangerous man in all of Harlow Bay. Chelsea needed someone incredibly smart to follow the stolen money hiding on the dark internet. She used Sang-hoon's secret funds to hire a brilliant rogue data analyst named Priya. Priya had recently lost her city job for asking far too many difficult questions about broken pipes. Together in Chelsea's small apartment, the two determined women stared at multiple glowing computer screens late into the night. Priya's flying fingers quickly hacked into heavily guarded city records, revealing the terrifying truth. They carefully built a massive, terrifying map on the living room wall. Red strings connected dirty shell companies to powerful, wealthy politicians. The corrupt network was stealing millions of dollars while purposefully building deadly, toxic water lines in the poorest neighborhoods of Harlow Bay. Chelsea felt her stomach twist with deep disgust as the ugly picture became clear. The greedy elites were actively poisoning helpless, low-income families just to buy more expensive cars and giant houses. The dangerous stakes were suddenly much higher, and Chelsea knew they had to tear this entire evil system down to the ground. She would not let them win this hidden war. The corrupt city council members gathered secretly inside their favorite luxury private club, laughing and drinking expensive wine. They felt completely untouchable in the beautiful, high-class building. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors swung open, and the music stopped. Lim Sang-hoon slowly walked into the quiet room, surrounded by his massive, silent bodyguards. The arrogant politicians froze in pure terror as the powerful Mafia boss dropped a thick legal folder onto their table. Sang-hoon calmly explained that he had just purchased the entire luxury building in cash. He was now their angry landlord. His dark eyes stared deeply into the soul of the terrified mayor. He leaned forward and delivered a chilling, unbreakable warning. If any of them dared to touch Chelsea Okafor, he would personally destroy their wealthy lives and evict them onto the dirty streets. He ordered them to back off the young plumber immediately. The greedy elites trembled as they realized they were fighting a very dangerous war on two fronts. They could not hide from the angry Shadow King of Harlow Bay. He left them sitting in total, terrifying silence. Chelsea pushed open the heavy glass doors of the Caldwell Street Public Clinic. The small waiting room was packed with tired mothers holding crying, sick children. Chelsea spoke quietly to a friendly nurse who had grown up in her exact neighborhood. The tired nurse safely handed over a thick stack of hidden medical files. Chelsea sat in the corner and carefully read the terrible numbers. Her heart broke into a million pieces as she stared at the horrifying lead-poisoning statistics. The dangerous sickness among young children under 10 years old was 4 times higher here than in the wealthy parts of Harlow Bay. The doctors had loudly complained for many years, but the corrupt city leaders completely ignored their desperate warnings. Chelsea walked outside past a rusted metal playground, watching 3 innocent kids drink from a broken water fountain. She felt sick to her stomach and had to sit down on a cold bench. This dangerous fight was no longer just about stolen money or lost plumbing contracts. It was a desperate, bloody, and terrifying war for the basic survival of her forgotten people. Back in the safety of the small apartment, Priya's fingers flew across her glowing computer keyboard. She was digging incredibly deep into the darkest, most hidden parts of the secret city records. Suddenly, Priya stopped typing and gasped in pure shock. She quickly called Chelsea over to the bright screen. Priya had finally smashed through the last tough firewall protecting the offshore bank accounts. She found the massive, wealthy parent company secretly funding all the toxic pipelines in Harlow Bay. The large letters on the screen spelled out Daesung Holdings. Chelsea felt all the warm blood completely drain from her tired face. She slowly backed away from the wooden table, her entire body shaking with sudden fear. She ran into her small bedroom and desperately dug out her brave father's old investigation notebook. Flipping quickly to the very last page he wrote before he died, she found the exact same name carefully circled in bright red ink, Daesung Holdings. Her dead father had found the massive monster hiding in the dark, and it had violently killed him to keep its terrible secret safe. She finally knew the truth. Chelsea stared at the glowing computer screen in absolute horror. Priya quickly pulled up all the secret financial records for Daesung Holdings, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The dark truth finally hit Chelsea like a heavy brick. This massive company was not a normal business. It was a giant illegal front for Lim Sang-hoon's dangerous criminal empire. The same powerful mafia boss who promised to carefully protect her was actually paying for the poisonous pipes. His dirty money had completely buried the deadly evidence for 12 long years. He had secretly paid the corrupt city council to keep their mouths shut, while innocent children got terribly sick from the toxic water. Chelsea felt a very deep, painful knot twist inside her tired stomach. She could barely breathe as she looked closely at the undeniable proof. The wealthy man who claimed he owed her brave father a massive life debt was an important part of the evil machine that killed him. She was completely trapped in a web of terrible lies, and her broken heart finally shattered into a million painful pieces. Chelsea marched directly into Sang-hoon's spotless waterfront office, clutching the printed financial documents tightly in her shaking hands. She did not wait for his bodyguards to announce her. She threw the heavy stack of papers onto his shiny wooden desk without saying a single word. Sang-hoon looked down at the undeniable proof of his dark crimes, and his cold face did not change. He slowly admitted that his massive criminal organization had proudly provided the strict financial cover-up for the city council. He softly claimed he only thought it was a normal business deal to save some money. He swore he did not know the pipes were actually leaking deadly toxins until it was far too late to stop the terrible project. Chelsea's dark eyes burned with fierce, uncontrollable anger as she listened to his weak excuses. His silence and greed had allowed innocent children to get terribly sick, and his dirty money had helped the evil people who murdered her brave father. The strong trust between them was completely broken, leaving nothing but cold, bitter betrayal hanging in the extremely quiet room. Chelsea did not yell or scream at the powerful mafia boss. She simply turned her back on Lim Sang-hoon and walked straight out of his spotless waterfront office. The heavy wooden doors closed behind her, cutting off the quiet apologies of the dangerous man who had sworn to protect her. As she walked alone into the cold, rainy night, her chest tightened with a crushing sense of utter betrayal. The very person shielding her from the cruel city council was actually a major part of the evil machine that had violently killed her brave father. Her mind raced with dark memories of her father's tragic funeral and the sick children playing near the toxic water. Sang-hoon's dirty money had kept all those terrible secrets safely buried in the dark. She was completely alone once again, just like she had been for the past 5 years. She finally realized that she could never trust anyone in power. Wiping the freezing rain from her tired face, Chelsea knew she had to finish this dangerous fight entirely by herself. Without Sang-hoon's terrifying bodyguards watching over her, the corrupt city council finally saw their perfect chance to strike. Later that quiet evening, Chelsea was sitting in her small kitchen while her young cousin, Adaze, finished her school homework. Suddenly, a strange, sharp hissing sound echoed from the old pipes hidden inside the walls. Chelsea's professional plumbing instincts kicked in immediately. She smelled the heavy, dangerous scent of pure gas filling the tight room. This was not a random leak. It was a deliberate trap. She grabbed Adaze by the arm and sprinted toward the metal fire escape, just as a massive, fiery explosion violently ripped through their home. Bright orange flames shattered the glass windows, throwing them both onto the hard street below. Coughing through the thick, black smoke, Chelsea shielded her crying cousin from the falling bricks. She stared up at the burning ruins of her entire life, her heart pounding with raw terror. The evil politicians had staged a deadly accident. It's exactly like they did to her father. They were trying to kill her right now. Before the smoke could even clear, 3 black armored cars screeched to a halt near the burning building. Sang-hoon's heavily armed men jumped out, quickly pulling Chelsea and crying a daze from the dangerous rubble. They were rushed through the dark city streets and locked tightly inside a massive, secret safe house. The beautiful mansion was filled with expensive furniture, soft beds, and endless warm food. A daze quickly fell asleep in a large, comfortable room, exhausted from the terrifying night. However, Chelsea could not relax at all. She paced nervously across the shiny marble floors, staring out the thick, bulletproof glass windows. Tall guards stood at every single door, watching her every move with cold, silent eyes. She was completely safe from the evil city council, but her heart felt incredibly heavy. The luxurious house did not feel like a real rescue. It felt exactly like a golden cage built to keep her trapped and quiet. She gripped her scarred hands together, desperately wishing she had her heavy plumbing tools and her true freedom back. Late that night, Sang-hoon quietly unlocked the heavy wooden door of the safe house. He looked deeply exhausted, his expensive dark suit covered in light gray dust from her ruined apartment. He sat down slowly across from Chelsea, his cold eyes filled with genuine fear for the first time. He slid a thick, heavy envelope across the shiny table. It contained millions of dollars in clean cash and 2 new fake passports for her and a daze. His voice was rough as he desperately begged the brave Plumber to stop fighting the corrupt politicians. He told her to take the money, disappear to a safe country, and completely drop the dangerous investigation so she could live. Chelsea stared at the large pile of money, her face as hard as solid steel. She thought about the sick children drinking toxic water and her brave father who was murdered for knowing the truth. She pushed the thick envelope right back across the table. Her voice was perfectly steady as she flatly refused his money, promising to finish this dangerous war. With Priya's brilliant computer skills, Chelsea bypassed the heavy security of Harlow Bay's emergency broadcast system. At exactly 8 o'clock, as every single television and radio in the city suddenly switched to a live video of the brave Plumber. Chelsea stood in front of a plain white wall, wearing her dirty leather apron and holding her father's worn notebook. Her voice was strong and completely steady as she spoke directly to millions of shocked viewers. She held up the horrifying medical records and the clear photos of the sickly blue poisoned pipes. Without a single drop of fear, she loudly named the corrupt mayor and the greedy city council members for everyone to hear. She explained exactly how they were purposefully stealing millions of dollars while slowly poisoning the poorest, most forgotten neighborhoods. The undeniable truth echoed through the quiet living rooms and busy restaurants of the entire city. Chelsea knew she could never hide from their absolute anger now. She had just painted a massive, permanent target on her own back, but the dark, deadly secret was finally out in the open. The corrupt city council immediately fought back with a cruel, terrifying message. Their expensive lawyers went on the news and proudly announced that they already knew every single step of Chelsea's secret plan. They calmly revealed the exact times she had met with Priya and tracked all her private computer files. Chelsea felt a sudden, freezing chill run fast down her spine. The terrible breach was coming from deep inside the Mafia safe house itself. Working fast, she tracked the hidden digital leak back to its true source. The awful result on her glowing screen made her gasp out loud. The dirty spy was Kwon Ji-ho, Lim Sang-hoon's most trusted right-hand man. Kwon had been secretly taking money from the greedy council for many years. As Chelsea dug even deeper into the stolen files, her broken heart completely shattered. Kwon was the exact man who had ordered the violent, deadly gas line explosion 5 years ago. He was the terrible monster who personally orchestrated her brave father's tragic murder. The dangerous people protecting her were actually the ones who destroyed her family. Chelsea marched directly into Sang-hoon's private office, clutching the printed digital files tightly in her trembling hands. She did not say a single word as she angrily slammed the heavy stack of papers onto his polished wooden desk. Sang-hoon looked down at the undeniable proof of the terrible betrayal. His dark, cold eyes slowly read the secret bank transfers and the hidden messages between his right-hand man, Kwon Ji-ho, and the corrupt city council. The terrifying mafia boss completely froze in absolute shock. The heavy silence in the large room was completely suffocating. Kwon was his closest friend and his most trusted guard for 17 long years. As Sang-hoon read the final page, his strong hands began to shake uncontrollably. He finally realized the horrifying truth staring right back at him. His best friend had secretly ordered the massive gas line explosion that violently murdered Emmanuel Okafor. The very brave man who had saved Sang-hoon's own life was cruelly killed by his trusted lieutenant. Chelsea stood tall, eyes quietly watching his entire world completely crumble. The powerful crime lord looked shattered, his broken heart quickly filling with pure, dark rage. Sang-hoon stood up slowly, his face now a hard mask of pure, deadly anger. He immediately reached inside his tailored jacket and pulled out his heavy, dark silver pistol. He coldly ordered his remaining loyal guards to find Kwon Ji-ho and bring him to the secret basement. The ruthless mafia boss was fully prepared to execute his old friend in the dark, exactly how the violent underworld handled terrible betrayals. He wanted to violently erase Kwon from the earth for murdering brave Emmanuel Okafor. But before Sang-hoon could take another step, Chelsea boldly blocked the heavy wooden door. She firmly planted her muddy boots on the floor and stared directly into his dangerous eyes. She fiercely demanded that he put the loaded gun away immediately. Chelsea bravely told him that if he killed Kwon in the dark shadows, the corrupt city council would never face real justice. She completely refused to let them hide their terrible, deadly crimes anymore. Her strong, fearless voice echoed loudly in the quiet room as she demanded that the entire city finally see the ugly truth clearly in the bright light. Chelsea stood bravely behind the wooden podium in the center of the crowded public square. Hundreds of bright news cameras flashed loudly, while blinding her tired eyes. She wore her faded work jacket, completely ignoring the expensive suits of the angry politicians standing nearby. With a steady, strong voice, she held up her father's battered notebook and the heavy, sickly blue pipe she had pulled from the muddy trench. She told the quiet, shocked crowd exactly how the elite contractors had purposely poisoned the water in their poorest neighborhoods. She read the horrifying medical records out loud, showing how innocent children were getting terribly sick just so the greedy city council could steal millions of dollars. As the undeniable hard proof was shown on the giant news screens, a massive wave of pure anger quickly spread through the entire city. Thousands of outraged citizens flooded the busy streets, demanding immediate justice for the forgotten people of Harlow Bay. Chelsea did not back down or hide. She stood incredibly tall in the bright sunlight, finally finishing the brave fight her father had started 5 long years ago. Deep inside their luxury private club, the wealthy elite contractors scrambled in total panic. The loud news reports of Chelsea's massive press conference played on every single television. The terrified politicians realized their entire world was quickly falling apart. They frantically called Lim Sang-hoon, begging the powerful mafia boss to save them immediately. The greedy men demanded that he use his dark, criminal network to completely forge fake documents and frame the brave plumber. They wanted to blame the innocent girl for the deadly, toxic water and completely ruin her life. However, Sang-hoon simply hung up his heavy black phone. He stood silently in his spotless waterfront office, looking out at the dark city. He was entirely done hiding in the shadows and protecting these terrible monsters. He remembered the brave man who had saved his own life 15 long years ago. Instead of forging the dirty lies, Sang-hoon slowly sat down at his polished desk and quietly prepared to make his final explosive play. He was going to completely burn his own massive empire to the ground to finally pay his heavy debt. Deep inside his hidden headquarters, Lim Sang-hoon finally unleashed the full, terrifying power of his criminal empire. He stood behind his most brilliant computer hackers, watching as their fingers flew across glowing keyboards. The fierce mafia boss gave a single quiet nod. In exactly 1 second, a massive, untraceable cyber leak exploded across the entire internet. He sent thousands of secret files directly to the FBI and every major news station in the city. The dark screens instantly lit up with the undeniable truth. He released every single piece of dirty blackmail, showing the corrupt politicians taking huge bags of stolen cash. He unlocked the hidden offshore bank ledgers, proving exactly how the wealthy elites paid for the poisonous pipes. Worst of all, Sang-hoon released the terrifying video evidence of his former best friend, Kwon Ji-ho, orchestrating the violent murder of Chelsea's brave father. The entire city of Harlow Bay stopped in absolute shock as the horrific crimes played on every television and phone. The greedy monsters hiding in their tall glass towers were finally exposed to the bright, punishing light. While the angry city watched the shocking news, Sang-hoon smoothly executed the second half of his brilliant plan. He could not afford to go to a dark prison, so he made sure his own name completely vanished. He ordered his elite team of expert hackers to hunt down every single digital record connected to his criminal empire. Working with lightning speed, they permanently deleted his fingerprints from all the dirty city contracts and secret bank accounts. Sang-hoon deliberately burned his own massive, wealthy front companies straight to the ground. He willingly destroyed millions of dollars to completely erase himself from the terrible story. The federal computers showed that the cruel city council and the evil Kwon Ji-ho were totally guilty, but the fierce mafia boss was left looking like a total ghost. He was completely untouchable. Standing in his quiet office, Sang-hoon watched the flashing police cars speed toward the wealthy luxury clubs. He had successfully protected the brave young plumber and finally paid his heavy life debt, keeping his own dark freedoms safely hidden in the deep shadows forever. Heavy rain fell over Harlow Bay as screaming police sirens finally replaced the quiet secrets of the wealthy elites. Dozens of federal agents stormed the luxury private club, roughly pushing the corrupt mayor and the greedy city council members into the backs of waiting police cars. The arrogant engineers from Halloran and Brent, who had cruelly laughed at Chelsea, were dragged out of their tall glass towers in heavy silver handcuffs. Their expensive, privileged lives were completely ruined forever. Across the city, heavily armed officers kicked down a thick wooden door, quickly arresting the terrible traitor Kwon Ji-ho for the violent murder of Emmanuel Okafor. The terrifying monsters who had purposefully poisoned the poorest neighborhoods were finally locked away in cold, dark cells. Meanwhile, Lim Sang-hoon stood quietly on his dark waterfront balcony, watching the flashing red and blue lights speeding far below. He took one last look at the massive, broken city before turning around and walking away. The powerful mafia boss vanished completely into the deep shadows, legally untouched and leaving absolutely no trace of his existence behind forever. 6 months later, the bright morning sun shined through the massive windows of a beautiful new boardroom. Chelsea Okafor, while the once ridiculed 27-year-old street plumber stood proudly at the head of a long mahogany table. She wore a clean, professional suit, but her hands were still rough and calloused. She had been officially contracted by the state government to completely rebuild the terrible water infrastructure of Harlow Bay. Later that same afternoon, a massive crowd gathered in her old, neglected neighborhood for a joyful, groundbreaking ceremony. The city's poorest residents cheered loudly as Chelsea lifted a heavy silver shovel and dug deep into the dark, muddy earth. As the happy people clapped, Chelsea glanced toward the very back of the large crowd. Standing quietly in the shadows was Lim Sang-hoon, wearing a plain dark jacket without any bodyguards. He looked directly into her eyes and gave a single, respectful nod. His heavy life debt to her brave father was finally paid in full. Before anyone else could even notice him, the powerful, untouchable Shadow King turned around and disappeared perfectly into the busy city. And that brings us to the end of Chelsea's incredible journey. The story leaves us with a powerful lesson. True courage isn't found in boardrooms, it's forged in the trenches. Chelsea proved that the truth, no matter how deeply it's buried, will always break through the surface. What was your favorite moment from Chelsea and Sang-hoon's story? Let us know down in the comments. If you were inspired by Chelsea's unbreakable spirit, please hit that like button, share this video, and make sure to subscribe to Afro K Mafia Diary for more epic stories. Thanks for watching.